4 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order of the Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation. If y'all please bow your heads, I'll lead the invocation today. Lord, thank you for the opportunity that we have to live in such a beautiful community. Thank you for all the people who work hard for the betterment of this community. We pray for your guidance as we consider those things that are on the agenda today, and just thank you for the blessing of all that we enjoy, including grace that comes through your Son, Jesus. In his name we pray, amen. All right, Visitors Citizens Forum. Do we have anybody signed up today that wants to speak?
No, sir.
All right, we'll move on next to the approval of the minutes that were in your packet. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the March 15th, 2021 meeting?
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Salinas, you're up for the KEDC report.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, looking at some of the national indicators, there's been some recent articles as far as state of manufacturing, how production is starting to pick up in most major sectors. Consumer confidence is starting to pick up as well throughout the country, and experts are now predicting that it could possibly be where the worst is behind us, unless, of course, there's some new variants, some new strains, a strain that would put us back to where we're at about a year ago. So everything is looking good as far as the economy, or it's in an upward tick. At the state level, we've seen a lot of activity with large projects, mid to large size projects that are looking for both existing buildings and greenfield sites throughout the state. It's just a mixture of manufacturing operations, distribution centers, and technology companies. And I will say that there's been a huge increase in activity since January, February this year. It's been the most activity I've seen from the state as far as the proposals, phone calls for projects that I've seen in the last 4 to 5 years. So it's very interesting how everything just really picked up here in the last few months. As far as Kerrville, Kerr County, our unemployment rate, we're at about 5.8%. That's up from about 4.4% a year ago. So again, we continue to be below the state and the national averages. That equals about 1,250 people that are unemployed in Kerr County, up from about 970 a year ago. Sales tax revenue, well, we know the story there. Very, very healthy numbers, and it started happening almost about a year ago. In addition to that, what we've seen is that here locally, companies are starting to hire again. So we expect those unemployment numbers to start decreasing pretty quick. And we've had a couple of companies that are saying that they're going to be hosting job fairs as well. So they should start employing people very soon. And then at the KDC, I mean, our project pipeline is pretty full. That being said, as far as projects, I'll start with Gulf Avionics. So we worked with that company. It was almost about a year ago, and they announced about a couple of months ago or a month and a half ago that they were coming to the Kerrville area, to the airport. We worked with the company as far as issuing a press release locally, but also issuing one at the national level. At the national level, I mean, there's been tons of coverage from a lot of media entities for this particular project. You know, that includes General Aviation News, Aviation Maintenance, the San Antonio, and the Austin Business Journal, so that's pretty significant. Aviation Week, Trade and Industry Development Magazine, Area Development Magazine. Those are some of the bigger ones. But we had about 30 publications throughout the country that picked up that particular article. And as a result of that, we got a lot of calls in our office. One from local companies, just kind of curious. And then other companies, I suspect also competitors, which is good for us because they can turn into leads, just kind of inquiring about the project and what we're doing here locally. We also had some venture capitalists, so we definitely took their information down. And what I like about this is that there's possibly a lead that came out of all this media activity that we got. We got a call from one of the top 10 site selection firms in the country. They're out of New York City. And they called us up and they said, we just saw this article. Kerrville's a little small for what we're trying to look for, but why don't you go ahead and put in for this RFP? And it's an RFP for an aerospace company. This was about 3 weeks ago. So we've been assembling that information. We've got another week before we submit it in. And again, they said, look, it's talking about New York. It sounds like New York. It's good that we're getting on their radar early on. Them calling us up is a big deal. We see that as a win as far as being able to get some traction with these site selection firms. Moving on to Killdeer, they've already created a handful of jobs. They've hired their HR person, and they're in the process of permanently relocating 2 of their employees from their North Dakota facility. And they've started the process of accessing state funds as far as workforce training. So they're moving along. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with them later this week. This is a new one, Project Gaming. I put this one on the list just to it's a good drill for us. I'm not going to say it's a long shot, but we're in it. It's a state lead. It's a manufacturer of gaming devices, and they're headquartered in Europe. Texas is one of 2 states that they're considering, so there's going to be a lot of communities putting in for this particular project. Here's a recurring theme that we've seen here in the last few months. They need to be near a metro area, which in this case is Austin, San Antonio, but they do not want to be in it. This would be their North American headquarters, upward about 30 employees, paying about $55,000 in annual wages. This is 3 to 5 years out. Key to this particular project is access to talent, which is audiovisual equipment installers. I think I know what that is, but I'll figure that one out. And computer technicians. So that's the bulk of the people that they're going to be hiring. So again, that's where that talent comes into play. So again, one of the reasons that we put this project on the list is that this is a trend that is now starting to look like a pattern post-COVID, where there's projects that, again, do not want to be in the big city, but they need to be in the periphery of that. And they're kind of like some of these mid-sized operations, but they bring high dollar value to the area. So an example of this particular project and some other ones coming our way, I like to say it fits us to a T. So again, we're preparing for that. Moving on to the Entrepreneur Center. So you've heard us talk about that, and there's been some coverage about that locally. Claudia Richards, she has been working on this project for about 2 to 3 months now. She's new to our team. We brought her on board actually as a consultant, specifically to launch this particular project for us, help us with it. She's one of our 40 under 40 recipients. She's from the Kerrville area. She's also one of our local entrepreneurs. And we're looking at this Thursday at the Hill Country Economic Summit, doing a formal announcement of the project and doing a deep dive into what this particular center is, what it all entails, who should be considering to become a member, so on and so forth. The official launch will be 2 weeks. I think it's the first week in May. And that's when we're launching the Leadership Mastermind series as a spinoff of the actual center for our first cohort of 20 members that are signing up for this. We're going to start promoting this right after the Economic Summit, social media, local media as well, and then just traditional phone calls as far as us reaching out to our network. Our top 40 awardees will be part of the ones that will be applying for that, as well as our list of young entrepreneurs. And I have to be careful how I say this, but we might be in a position to announce the first prospect or the first company that would be coming in to part incubate and part work with some local companies as part of this Entrepreneur Center. So we're working with them right now to try to figure out those details. And if so, then we would be announcing that Thursday at the summit. Okay, so let's see if this works. I think Teresa's on the line.
I am. Can you hear me?
Wow, yeah. So if you could do your report, and then I'll come back and close and be available for any questions.
Okay. So kind of piggybacking off of what Gil just spoke about, we are working with a prospect in the technology industry in partnership with Texas Workforce Commission to develop that pipeline of IT and cybersecurity workforce. So like he said, we'll be having more information and talking about more about that in the upcoming weeks. We're really excited to be partnering with them. And again, partnering with Texas Workforce Commission on how we can build a training program that is very specific to the companies within Kerrville, what their IT needs are, what their cybersecurity needs are. And this kind of also dovetails into the P-TECH program at Ingram ISD. We've begun to have conversations with them on how we can partner within not only the Entrepreneur Center, but with other community and company partners within Kerr County to enhance their P-TECH program and develop that pipeline of workforce from students coming out of Ingram ISD. We also have begun announcing this year's 2021 top 40. And we're really excited about the opportunity to bring in a new cohort of entrepreneurs. We did not set any limitations this year for what they would look like as far as age group goes. So we're really excited to be able to open that up. We also added additional counties to this year's nominees. So we've included Kimball, Blanco, Kerr, Bandera, Kendall, Lampasas, Gillespie, Mason, and Burnett. And we're really excited to say that we already have 2 people as part of our panel of judges, one from Mason, one from Burnett, which are the new counties that we added, as well as representatives, of course, from Kerr, Bandera, Kendall, and Gillespie. So I think we're set up for another great year, and we're excited to see the submissions that are coming in and be able to present those again at a new event in November for the awards. So that's all I have, Gil.
All right. Thanks, Teresa. Okay, so in closing, just a little bit about the strategy. And sometimes you hear me say, or hear us say that, there's a science that goes behind this. And I like to use Gulf Avionics as an example, as well as Killdeer, which is, there's an announcement, there's proactive business articles. You pair that up with some social media activity, with some traditional, minimal mail outs to executives and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, some traditional phone calls, inbound and outbound, and then finding a way to continue adding on to some of the announcements that we've been having, getting creative with that, and then continue working with the Office of the Governor, they're key, and fostering those relationships with site selectors. It all kind of comes back in full circle. And again, that was exactly what happened with the Gulf Avionics and us getting that phone call from the New York site selection firm that said, you know what, we want to put you on the database. You're a little bit small, but go ahead and send us what you have. And that to us is basically everything coming back in full circle. And really, it equates it's a win for the community and for the area. So with that, that concludes my report. I can field any questions.
When is Gulf Avionics going to open?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Gulf Avionics, when will they open?
They are actually, they're looking at, I think it's the second week in May. Because the first week in May, they're opening up shop at their Dallas Love Field, doing a rebranding, reopening of their facility, and then they would be doing that here as well.
And how many technicians will they have here, do you know?
First year is about 7 to 8, but by the second year, there would be closer to 20, and the goal is by year 4 or 5, there would be at about 50.
Okay.
And remind everybody of the salary, if you will, Gil.
Those are $75,000 in salaries that are coming into our community.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is the EIC project status update, and you should all have a large format. Thank you, Mr. Hoppy. Project status report. Does anybody have any questions, or would anybody like to discuss any of the projects that are on that report?
When's the feasibility study going to be presented on the Aquatic Center?
So right now, we're anticipating kind of doing a mini master plan on Singing Wind Park. So now that we're coming out of some of the pandemic protocols going into this summer, we anticipate that that will be part of that community engagement, since that is such a big component to Singing Wind Park. We'll get the consultant re-engaged, and they'll come provide some public input on that
Do you think
process.
they'll come this summer?
Yes, yeah. probably the early part of the summer.
But they finished all their,
They did, right out about a year ago, right in the
Yeah,
middle
a
of the
year.
pandemic. Yes, sir. So, that's the strategy right now.
okay, thank you.
Are there comments or questions on that? Okay, Ms. Dozier, it's all yours.
All right, good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you briefly about the financial results for the month ended March 31st. Start with the income statement, and I'm looking at the current period column, the second from the left. So starting with the sales tax, continues very strong, as Gil had mentioned in his report. So for the month of March, almost $322,000 for the EIC portion of it. That's up 19% compared to the same month in the previous year, and significantly better than budget. You'll remember that we had budgeted actually that we thought sales tax might be down this year, and that definitely has not happened. We continue to see all the usual suspects. The regional retail, online, and manufacturing performance is really strong. Just a little bit of a preview for next month. So we've already received sales tax for the month of April. You'll remember that sales tax is on a 2-month lag. So sales tax that we receive in April actually represents sales that occurred in February. So I was a little bit shocked at first to see that it was flat, like almost exactly the same as the same period in the previous year. But then when we got the detail and I started looking through it, I saw significant declines like in food service categories and in some of the big box retailers that lost electricity for multiple days during the storm. And so it appears to be winter storm related for that period of time, that there were a lot of businesses that just were completely closed that week. So hopefully that's not a harbinger of things to come, and it's just kind of a blip. But moving down through the rest of March, on the expenditure side, we just had normal expenditures for the month for the administrative services fee and then also for the debt service transfers. You'll notice that last debt service line item for the KPUB loan, in accordance with the board's wishes, we repaid the entire KPUB loan in March. So that's paid in full and no longer outstanding. And then on the project side of things, there were some expenditures for the Doyle School project. So that $18,000 there represents the first construction pay app over at the Doyle Center. And I understand things are starting to move pretty quickly over there, and we've continued receiving construction pay apps in April. So it looks like that's progressing. So we end up the month with total expenditures of $1.1 million and a change in net position of that negative $805,000, but that's basically due to paying off that $1 million loan in 1 month.
Maybe on the sales tax,
Yep.
just in my very unprofessional way, as I drive around town, the restaurants seem to be packed. Are we anticipating a pretty good uptick from our hospitality side with restaurants and motels?
Like looking at 22 or
Yeah, I
looking
mean,
at the rest
well,
of the year?
for the rest of this year, would you anticipate those numbers to start climbing back to where they should be? I mean, because I know we've been off on that section a little bit.
The restaurants and hospitality definitely are looking strong. Looking at like our hotel and motel occupancy tax, especially, we're actually pretty much flat with the previous year, which is pretty incredible because that means we've rebounded back to pre-pandemic levels. But it is interesting when you look at the detail there on at least the hospitality side of things. It depends on the property that you're looking at. You know, we definitely can see some changes in consumer tastes as far as, individual cabins and short-term rentals and that kind of thing are much more popular than just a traditional hotel. But we are seeing increases at some of the restaurants now that we hadn't seen previously. Our restaurants through the pandemic did better than I thought they would. Most had small decreases, but not real significant decreases. But it did kind of depend on the type of restaurant, and certainly those with real limited seating that didn't have a large takeout business were more impacted, that kind of thing. But yeah, all indications are the economy's coming on strong, and lots of federal stimulus money, more federal stimulus money coming. So potential inflationary pressures, but a strong economy for sure. So
Well, inflation means sales tax go up too.
it does. That's
And
that's the
I
advantage
think
for
the freeze
you.
is gonna have some real upside in March and April because people had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And they gotta fix them.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and definitely some, home improvement was already doing well, and then they had even more reason to, sell lots of replacement
and the
pipes.
motorcycle
So.
guys are back, so.
Yes, they are, and the Corvettes, and,
It's hard for restaurants and small retail to really move the needle too much because our top 5 sales taxpayers are 35% of the total.
Yeah, no, I knew that.
So as those go, big guys goes the whole thing. But it is looking better for sure on that front.
Yeah, and the fast food restaurants have been pretty consistent. They
They're in
didn't
the
see
whole-
a lot of
They're
impact.
in the whole
but,
COVID thing, yeah.
Right.
Amy, of course, the sales tax doesn't trend with housing necessarily, but with the fast housing market, do we get any residual benefits on sales tax revenue when houses are selling in 2 hours and things like that, moving really quickly?
I've heard crazy stories about the past month. Not directly. If people have money left over to furnish their new home, I guess, and that kind of thing, or potential remodel projects, but yeah, not directly from the sale of real estate. So, property taxes are based on home values, and if there's especially if some frozen property gets turned over, that kind of thing, that could impact the city's finances, not specifically EIC, but all right. Let's see. So moving on to the cash flow forecast. I did extend this out through the first 6 months of fiscal year 2022. So just know that, that 2022 budget is just in the beginning stages now. And so these are just kind of projections for y'all to look at bottom line cash numbers, but this is not locked into what the 22 budget is or anything like that. But anyway, looking strong if you look across the bottom line. Looking at, a low balance of 1.9 million, and then building back up. And of course, that doesn't anticipate, additional new projects. It just has the existing projects in the mix there. And then finally, this slide shows a little bit more about that sales tax that I just talked about, and you'll see the April number that I went ahead and included in there. On the cash analysis piece in the bottom left-hand corner, our interest rates are ticking back up ever so slightly, but we're above 10 basis points, 10.5 basis points now. So it's a little bit better than it was. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Good job.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got executive session and a couple of items to address there, but before we do, did any of you guys want to make any comments?
No, just,
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
all right. All right, well then, it is 4:23, we will adjourn into executive session. Oh wait, I got to get a motion.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we go into executive session under section 551.071, 551.072, 551.087 to discuss the matters listed on the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Everybody approves. All right, we will now go into executive session at 4:24. Okay, we back on? All right, it is 4:43. We are out of executive session. No action taken. Do we have any items for future agendas or announcements? None? Okay, then we are adjourned.